Boker Tov, today's Daf Yomi is Kesubos Daf Yud Beis, Kesubos 12. We're going to start on the bottom of Yud Aleph from the Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Kansa Rishon L'Shum Nisuin. Let's say husband number one marries a woman for the purposes of chuppah, so he brings her to the chuppah. But then there are witnesses showing nistera that they were never secluded. Meaning to say, the witnesses say they didn't actually consummate the marriage. Maybe he dropped dead during the chuppah, or Yinami Nistera, or maybe they went into the yichud room, but it was just for a second, and then he stormed out, and that was the end of it. So Eina Sheni Yachol Aton Tanas Besuim. Then husband number two, when he marries her, he still can't claim, I was expecting a virgin. The commentaries explain, the Rishonim explain, because maybe since the witnesses didn't give, when they said, they weren't together, maybe they were just trying to help her out a little bit, maybe they weren't paying close attention. But the presumption is that if they get married, you have to assume that they're actually married and that they consummated, even if there are witnesses that say they didn't. So that's what they say. Because the first guy married her. So Rabba taught on top of Yubezim and Aleph, Zosomeres Kansa B'cheskas Besua V'nimtzas Be'ua Yesh L'Ksuva Mana. So Rabba says, we learn from this that if you marry her with the presumption that she's a virgin, and then you discover that she's not a virgin, you still have to give her a ksuva of 100. Why? Because this guy, this second husband, relied upon the witnesses. So he thought for sure that she was a virgin. And it says in the Brisa, it says, he can't say I was expecting a virgin. He has to give her the ksuba of 100. So therefore, we see from here that if you marry her with the presumptive status that she's a virgin and then you discover she's not, you have to give her a ksuba of a 100. Ravashi rejects this inference from Rabbah. He says, no, but he says, actually, I could tell you, really, she doesn't get anything under those circumstances where you marry her expecting that she's a virgin, and in the end, she's not. Shani Hacha, this case is different. Shari Kansa Rishon, because she was already married, and so therefore the person should have realized that she was not a virgin. We're asked a side question now. V'nechosh shema tachtav zinta. Why doesn't the second husband go to the court to try and drum up witnesses? Maybe she was adulterous. You have to have that concern that maybe she was adulterous and he's not allowed to be with her, like we had in the first Daf. Gemara says, Amrav Sharvia could go into Kidesh Baal altar. Now we're talking about a case where we don't have to be concerned that she was adulterous on his watch, because the second husband betrothed her and immediately took her into the room in order to consummate. So there would have been no time for her to be adulterous on his watch while she was betrothed to him. Iki Demasni wa Masnisin. There's some who have this whole discussion between Rabbah and followed by Ravashi and Rav Sharbia. There's some who have this whole discussion not on a brisa, but actually on our Mishnah. What does it say in our Mishnah? Besua almana grusha chalutza min hanesuin. It says in our Mishnah that if you have a virgin who was a widow or a divorcee or chalutza from the chuppah, from the marriage, ksuvasa mana. She only gets a ksuva of 100 ve'ela and tanas besuin. And if the husband, the second husband consummates with her and he says she's not a virgin, he can't make a claim. So the Gemara says, how do we have a besua, a virgin from the nisuin, from the second stage? The Gemara says, the first husband took her to the chuppah, but he never consummated. So now, it's basically the same idea as the Mishnah. So if you marry her with the presumptive status that she's a virgin, in the end, she's not, then you have to give her 100. That's what we see from this source. So Rashi says, no. I could say to you in general she gets nothing. Shani Yacha, this case is different. This case, you might have thought, this case, she's not entitled, this case, she's entitled to 100, and you can't say, I don't have to give her anything because I was expecting a virgin, because you actually brought her to the chuppah. Gemara says the side question, like before, why don't we have to be concerned that maybe she was mizana, she had nus while she was married to the second guy? He should go to the court. The Gemara says, Amar Sharbi could go in Shekida Shubo altar. Same thing, that case as the Bryson. No, he betrothed her and married her immediately, and therefore he's not at all concerned that she was mizana. So one has this whole conversation on the Brisa, which says that there were witnesses, and one has it on the Mishnah where he went to the chuppah, but there were no witnesses. Where the first wife went to the chuppah with the first, where the wife went to the chuppah with the first husband, but there were no witnesses that he didn't consummate. Whereas in the Brisa, there are witnesses that he didn't consummate. So the Gemara says, "Mande masni wa masnisin, mande masni wa Brisa, kol shekena masnisin." The one who has this conversation that he does about the Brisa would say, for sure about the Mishnah. Why? Because if in the case where there were witnesses that she didn't consummate with the first marriage, and we say that the second husband still has no right to claim I was expecting a virgin, even though there were witnesses that she didn't consummate, and we still say he has no right, then for sure in the case of the Mishnah where there were no witnesses she didn't consummate, that he might, for sure in that case he would say, in that case, he would say you don't have a claim of Basua because she went to the chuppah. But the one who learns this whole discussion only on the Mishnah, but he wouldn't have this conversation between Rabbah, Ravashi, Rav Sharbia, not on the Brisa, because in the Brisa, Misham Dematzi Amarla, Ana Edim Samche, because in the Brisa, in the case of the Brisa, the husband could claim, I was relying upon the fact that there were witnesses and who said that you didn't consummate, and therefore I don't want to pay you the ksuba price of a virgin, only of a widow. I don't want to pay you even of a widow anymore because I was expecting a virgin, and so therefore I shouldn't have to pay you anything. So it says the Mishnah, so let's say somebody eats a meal with it at his father-in-law's house in Judah. There are no witnesses to the meal, and we'll see that the meal was between the husband and his betrothed. He can no longer say after he marries her, I was expecting a virgin and you're not a virgin. There's no blood. He can't say that because he's secluded with her. And so therefore we could say you were the one who took away her virginity when she was betrothed. And that's the reason why she's not a virgin on the wedding night. So the Gemara says, from the fact that it says one who eats in Judah by his father-in-law, we see from here that there are certain places in Judah that they don't eat with the father-in-law before the meal. We see that in Judah there were different places where they had different practices. Like we go into the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda taught and in Yehuda, they used to take the bride and the groom and put them in a seclusion for some time prior to the chuppah, so that he'll be familiar with her. They wouldn't do this in the Galilee. Why would they do this in Judah? So Shita Mekubetzes connects this to this idea of the higamon. Remember, we learned back on Daf Gimel Amabeis that the higamon, the Gimel Amabeis or Beis Amabeis, that the higamon would take the it's Gimel Amabeis. That what would the higamon do? The higamon would take this. The higamon would on Gimel Amabeis. The higamon would take the woman on the first night of her wedding. And so therefore, if she wouldn't be a virgin, maybe they could avoid that issue. Also, alternatively, maybe this would connect the bride to the husband in such a strong bond that she would not get excited by the higamon. So we see that in Judah that this was the practice, that they would put the bride and the groom together for a yichud prior to the wedding. And so therefore he was no longer able to make this claim. He's no longer able to make a claim of I was expecting a virgin because since he was secluded with her, he lost the right to make that claim because it's possible that he was the one who took away her virginity. In the Galilee, they wouldn't do that. In Yehuda, at first, they would establish two attendants. One would be watching the man and one would be watching the bride. To make sure, to watch the bride and the groom when they entered into the chuppah, Rashi explains, make sure they didn't do any funny business, that the bride didn't sneak in blood from a bird and pass it off as her own blood to say, look, I'm a virgin. And also to make sure that the husband didn't destroy the sheet and say, look, there's the sheet, there was no blood on the sheet. They wouldn't do that in the Galilee. In Yehuda, the Shushvin and the attendants used to sleep in the same house as the bride and the groom on the night of the wedding to make sure there was no funny business. In the Galilee, they wouldn't do that. And now we have this last line in the Brisa, which is an unusual source. It says, an opaque statement. It says, and whoever doesn't adopt this practice cannot make a claim of Tanas Pasulim, cannot make a claim of that I was expecting a virgin. So the Gemara asks, this statement, what's it referring to? Whoever doesn't adopt this custom cannot make a claim of Basulim. If you want to say on the first clause, it should say Kol Shenahag. Kol Shenahag, by the way. It shouldn't say whoever doesn't adopt this custom of being secluded can't make this claim. It says whoever does adopt this custom of being secluded can't make this claim. So therefore, Ela Sefer refers to the last clause where it says that we would put the attendants with the bride and the groom. If that's the case, Kol Shalom Mushmash Mi Ba'alei. It shouldn't say anyone who doesn't have the custom. It says anyone who doesn't have these attendants to make sure they didn't do any funny business can't make the claim, because you could say that there was some, like the evidence was altered. So therefore, Amar Bai or Amar Reisha, Bai says it refers to the first clause. V'tani Kol Shenag. He says change the gear. So don't say whoever doesn't have this custom. It says whoever had this custom cannot make the claim. So Amar Rabba Kol Shenag Katani. Rabba says, but that's not what it says. It says Kol Shenag. It says whoever doesn't have this custom. So therefore, El Amar Rabba Hachi Kamar. Rabba changes the text and he says this is what it means. Kol Shenag Minag Begalio Minag Galio Begalio. Whoever doesn't accept the custom of the Galileans in the Galilee, but rather in the Galilee acts like the custom of Judah, that they would seclude the bride and the groom, such a person cannot make this claim of Tanas Basulim. Whereas Rav Ashi says, I know this phrase refers to the last clause, the Tani Kol Shalom Mushmash. It says, and read whoever does not have these attendants set up cannot make this claim of Tanas Basulim. Says the Mishnah, Achas Amanas Yisrael, Achas Amanas Kohanim Kesubos Amana. Whether it's a widow who's a daughter of an Israelite or is a daughter of a Kohen, either way, the Ksuba, that if she's a widow, her Ksuba is 100. But Beis Din Shel Kohanim Hayugovam Absua Arba Meos Zuz. But the Kohanim themselves set up a court. And they established that the baseline price that you would get, we know that you're always allowed to add on to the price, but this was the baseline price in case people didn't make a ksuba or they just said we went to standard document. So the Beis Din of Kohanim that they would collect for the virgin was 400 zuz, as opposed to 200 for everybody else. The Chachamim did not object to this. So the Gemara says, Tana v'amanas Kohanim ksubas masayim. We have a different source which says that the Almana of the Kohanim, the Almana who was the daughter of the Kohanim, her ksuba was 200. So the Gemara says, Vanan Tanan Achas. Almanas Yisrael, Achas Almanas Kohanim Ksubas Amana. But our Mishnah says it's 100. So why do we have this price which says it's 200? So Ravashi Shtei Tekanos Havu, that there were two tekanos. There are two reforms that were instituted. Me'ikara initially take Initially, they established for the Besua Ksuba of 400 zuz. If she was the daughter of the Kohen, U'almana And for the daughter of the Kohen who was a widow, they established Mana, they established 100 zuz. Top of your base and a base. Keeping the Chazu, the Mazal's Libahu, but then they saw that it wasn't respectful to the Kohanim because she was only getting, the widow was only getting 1/4. And also she was now getting the same as the regular Israelites. So the Kohanim were disappointed in this. So Takinu Masan. So they established it, the widow of the Kohen, to show that she's more distinguished, she would get 200. But But then they saw that everybody, when nobody was marrying the widows of the Kohanim, they made the price too high. The Amri Adin Stephen Almanas Kohanim, Nezal Nesa Besua Bas Israel. They said, why should we marry a Kohen's daughter for that price? Who's a widow. We can marry for that same ksuba, we can marry the virgin from the Israel. So Adrinu Malsayo. So they returned it and say that the widow of the Kohen gets, of the daughter, Kohen's daughter is a widow, gets 100. So then Gemara says, Beis Din Shel Kohanim, they established a ksuba of 400 zuz. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Lo Beis Din Shel Kohanim Bavad Amru. Not only did they say this about the Kohanim themselves, even those families who were very distinguished. Basically, these families wanted to act like Kohanim. It's a great thing to say, I want to strive to be like the Shevet Levi, the tribe of Levi. So even those families, if they want to do it, like the Kohanim, they want to establish in certain communities that the Kesubos is 400 zuz, they're allowed to do it. Gemara challenges this. So we have a brayso which says if you want to do it like the Kohanim, you do it. You could go and Bas Israel, a Kohen, like the daughter of an Israelite to a Kohen, who Bas Kohen Israel, and the daughter of a Kohen to an Israelite. That you could do. So the Gemara explains, Bas Israel Kohen, who Bas Kohen Israel, who the Ikot Sak Kahuna. Okay, where do we allow you to charge them more money to make a baseline of 400? Where there is one aspect in the relationship where the person was a Kohen, either Bas Israel to a Kohen or Bas Kohen to Israel. Because there's a tzad kahuna of there's one person there is at least a Kohen of a Bas Israel. Well, but it would seem to be that if it would be two regular Jews, a daughter of an Israelite to an Israelite, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. Isn't that the implication of the source? The Gemara says no. Lo mi bai kamer. It's a lo mi bai source. Not only this, but also this. Meaning to say, lo mi bai Bas Israel. Not only a Bas Israel to a Israel, are you not allowed to charge more? Are you allowed to charge more? Because in that case, he's allowed to charge more because he can't say just by marrying me, I'm elevating you because I'm a Kohen. He can't say that, so he's allowed to. So therefore, we could say you have to pay more. Of a Bas Yisrael, a Kohen, we might have thought when it's a regular Israelite, when it's a regular Bas Yisrael to a Kohen, we might have thought the Matzi Amarla, that he could say to you, I'm elevating you to a new social status. Therefore, I shouldn't have to pay you the 400 zuz. You might have thought he doesn't have to pay it. Kamashma, no, he does have to pay it. So, okay, now we're up to the next Mishnah. And no says Aisha, somebody marries the woman. And he doesn't find her a virgin. He finds that she's not a virgin. She claims, she claims, look, I was a virgin. You betrothed me. I was a virgin then. Then I was assaulted. When it's it's your bad luck that I'm not a virgin anymore. But we were betrothed when we had the ksuba. This proves that the ksuba goes back even to the betrothal. From the moment we were betrothed, I was a virgin, like I promised. And he says, no, the whole thing happened prior. You lost your virginity prior to being betrothed, and you lied to me. And so therefore, the whole thing is a mistaken transaction. So Rabbi Gamliel, the Rabbi Eliezer, that we believe her. Why do we believe her? The Gemara's initial assumption is we believe her because we have a concept called Bari B'Shema Bari Adif. She's certain, and he cannot be certain. She's certain that she was a virgin and she was assaulted. And he's not certain. So Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer say we believe her. And so therefore he has to pay her the ksuba of a besua, of a virgin. No, we don't just trust her just because she says it. But rather we say that we're going to assume that she's under the presumptive status of being that she was lost her virginity even before she was betrothed. When she tricked him, until she proves a proof that she was a virgin at the moment of the betrothal. I don't know how she would bring such a proof, but she could bring such a proof. And if she did, then she's correct. Idmar, so the Gemara wants to connect this dispute between Rabbi Gamliel, who says we believe her, Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer say we believe her, whereas Rabbi Yeshua says we don't. The Gemara wants to connect this to a different dispute. Idmar manali biyatha, a person makes a claim. This is for a Bagatama case. A person makes a claim, you owe me $100. How Amar, and the second guy says, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. So Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Huna, Amri Chayev, they say, Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Huna say, under those circumstances, the person is liable. Rav Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan, Amri Pater. Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan say that under those cases, the person is exempt. So Rashi points out that even though he's exempt, he still has to take an oath, but that's rabbinic oath. So Rav Huna, Rabbi Yehuda, Amri Chayev, why do they say he's liable? Because Bari V'Shema, Bari Adif. Because this is the case of the first guy who makes the claim is certain, the second guy is uncertain. When you have a case of Bari V'Shema, the Bari is better. And so therefore, it's like Rabbi Gamliel, presumably, and Rabbi Eliezer, who say that since she's certain, we believe her. So whereas Rav Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan, Amri Pater, they say he's exempt. If the guy who says, I don't know if I owe you the money, he's exempt from having to pay, because they're going to say that you establish the money in the status of where it is, and this person didn't bring a proof. And so therefore, since he didn't bring a proof, it's not sufficient just to make the claim. And so therefore we leave the money in the case where it is. And so that's what he says. So Amarle Abaye or Rav Yosef. So Abaye says to Rav Yosef, hold on. How do Rav Huna with the Rav Yehuda? He says that which Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda taught, that the person is liable to pay the money in the case where he says, I don't know if I owe you. He says, this teaching of Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda, the Shmueli. This is also consistent where they say, Bari V'Shema, Bari Adif. This is consistent with the position of Shmuel, where it states, well, what does Shmuel say? Where Shmuel says the following, the Tanakh, because we learned in Mishnah, we're going to learn this on tomorrow's daf. The Tanakh we learned Taisim Mubaris. If the girl is pregnant, and they say to her, Mativo, they say to the girl, Mativo Shavu Barzeh, what's the nature of this baby? And she says, it came from such and such a person, and this child can marry a Kohen. It's basically okay. We believe her. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer say she's believed, and because we say we're going to presume that she has the presumption that she's kosher, and we're not going to disqualify her out of a doubt. Whereas Rabbi Yeshua argues there and says she's not believed, and we're going to assume that the child was pregnant from a mamzer or a nasin until she brings a proof. Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, and Rabbi Yehuda taught in the name of Shmuel. Halacha, Rabbi Gamliel, he says that the law is like Rabbi Gamliel. The Amar Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Shinana, Amar Ron Mishmei, the Shmuel Shalacha Rabbi Gamliel, Af Barishona. And he said, you told us that this halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, not only in this case of the pregnant woman, where it's there about whether or not something is permitted or prohibited, but also about our dispute where she says, I am still entitled to the Kesubos, which is the case of money. And you said also in that case, the law is like Rabbi Gamliel. My after Rishona, what does it mean even in the first case? Even though you could have said, listen, the husband is making the claim and he has the money, keep the money where it is in the husband's claim. Amar Rabbi Gamliel, Bari Adif. Rabbi Gamliel says Bari is better. So we see from here, Bari V'Shema, Bari Adif. Rabbi Gamliel says it in the case of our Mishnah, and also he says it in the case of Manoi Biyatcha, that he would agree with Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. And in that case where somebody makes a claim, he would say, I don't have to pay the 100 if I don't know, that he'd have to pay it because that case is not certain. So he would agree. He would agree with Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, so that he's liable to pay. Mar says not necessarily. Lema Rav Yehuda, Rav Huna. The Amri. Wait, Mar first says Lema Rav Yehuda, Rav Huna. The Amri Rav Gamliel. Maybe Rav Yehuda, Rav Huna. They hold like Rav Gamliel. Bari V'Shema, Bari Adif. Rav Nachman, Rav Yochanan. The Amri Rav Yoshua. Maybe Rav Nachman and Rav Yochanan hold like Rav Yoshua. The Gemara says no. Amrach Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, oh no, the Amri. It says I can even hold like Rabbi Gamliel, even though I say in the case of where the person makes the claim, I say Ukimimona Bachaskas Mari is exempt from having to pay because the guy has to bring proof. But in this case of the Ksuba, I'll say that she's believed like Rabbi Gamliel. Why? Ad kan will come Rabbi Gamliel Hasam El Ikamiga, because why does Rabbi Gamliel say in the case of the woman who the husband says you're not a virgin? That where he says Misharas Misha Achalarastich Ayamekachi Mekachtos. Why in that case does Rabbi Gamliel say we believe her? Ella de Ikamigo, because she could have said a better claim. Rashi says she could have said I was Mukas Eitz, I wasn't assaulted, and then she'd still be permitted to a coin. But in this case, one person claims 100, the other says I don't know, my Migoika. What migu does he have? And so therefore, even Rabbi Gamliel would say in this case that he's liable, that he has to pay. Right? Even Rabbi Gamliel would say in this case that there's no why should the one who makes the claim be believed? There's no reason to believe him. It's not a case of Bari V'Shema. And so therefore, I wouldn't necessarily believe him. So therefore, the person is exempt. Or maybe alternatively, why does Rabbi Gamliel say she's believed? Because we're going to say, let's keep the money where it is. But in this case, the claimant, what chazaka does he have? He doesn't have a chazaka that it's his. And so therefore, he's not able to get the money from her. And hachinami mistaber, indeed, it's logical to assume like we learned the Rav Nachman the Rav Nachman really holds like Rav Gamliel. The imkain, because if we're not going to say that, we have two contradictory halachic principles. Because the kaimon hilchos like Rav Nachman b'dinei, we know that the halacha is like Rav Nachman by monetary matters. In this case, we would say that he's exempt. But we also know that in this case, laws like Rabbi Gamliel says we believe the woman. So it must be that Rabbi Nachman also is consistent with Rabbi Gamliel. So we say yes, indeed, Rabbi Nachman is consistent with Rabbi Gamliel. We'll stop here. God willing, pick this up.